Janice Sack's brother, Anthony.
Ever wonder how Bobby Bacala, a guy who still lived with his trains, suddenly bought Johnny Sack's $1.2 million mansion? Let's follow the money.
He wants to sponsor the cannoli eating contest. I better see an envelope by tomorrow.
Somewhere between the untraceable envelopes of cash, the bottomless ZD metaphors, and the obsessive model train collection, there's a glaring question the Sopranos never truly answers. How exactly did Bobby Bacala Bacalieri manage to buy Johnny Sack's $1 million McMansion?
Janice Sack's brother, Anthony.
Season 6, Episode 10 makes it clear. Tony arranges for Johnny's house, valued at $1.2 million, to sell to Janice and Bobby for half that. But even at $600,000, this is a purchase that seems wildly beyond the financial means of a man whose greatest vices are toy locomotives and pasta sauce. Bobby, once known as the mob's soft-spoken errand boy, was never painted as the type swimming in unmarked bills. His biggest early series splurge was the occasional gift for Janice, not a suburban palace in Essex County.
The wall is reserved for people whose commitment begins at the $50,000 level.
Tony, who regularly griped about Carmela's request for $50,000 toward Meadows' college tuition, hardly seemed the sort to casually hand over $300,000 to his brother-in-law. And yet, here's Bobby, suddenly a homeowner in the League of New Jersey's elite. One can't help but wonder whether Tony subsidized the deal out of guilt, misplaced affection, or the sheer absurdity that fuels so much of the Sopranos' financial logic. Of course, there are theories, wild, contradictory, and occasionally brilliant. Some propose Bobby simply sold his old house, which might have fetched a modest $300,000 in 2006's feverish housing market.
Nobody's been hiding nothing. I had the same dumping deal with what's-his-name, the operations manager since I've been there at Borough Sanitation.
Others suggest a convenient mortgage, aided by a pliant union appraiser and falsified W-2s courtesy of his no-show job. After all, the same system that let Tony justify his income through Barone Sanitation surely had room for Bobby to appear employed. In the early 2000s lending climate, a paper trail and a handshake were often as good as cash. Still, even the math of mob life strains under scrutiny. Bobby's promotion to captain would have padded his income, but this wasn't the kind of crew that pulled in Wall Street bonuses. Despite the cinematic aura of opulence, The Sopranos consistently depicted its wise guys as hustlers grinding for petty scams, living hand-to-mouth in high style. Paulie Walnuts lived in a cramped townhouse. Silvio's home was respectable, but modest. Christopher barely graduated from squalor. Tony alone flaunted true wealth, and only because the show needed its anti-hero's mansion as a visual metaphor for suburban rot. Realistically, Bobby's cash flow would have been comfortable, but hardly spectacular. A few thousand skimmed from each collection, the odd envelope from Tony, and perhaps a payoff from one of Junior's former operations. Enough for middle-class comfort, not a $600,000 down payment. To imagine Bobby picking up $3,000 a day is to imagine him collecting from 100 establishments on a perpetual loop. The logistics collapse faster than Ralph Cifaretto's temper. Then again, The Sopranos isn't an accounting seminar, it's an opera of contradiction. Bobby's finances, like everything else in the show, serve the drama first and logic last. The purchase symbolizes his ascension in Tony's world, his transition from soft-hearted subordinate to full-fledged made man. The house isn't just real estate, it's a crown, bestowed, perhaps reluctantly, by Tony himself. The transaction aligns perfectly with Tony's pattern of generosity wrapped in manipulation.
But how about the fact you wouldn't be living in that fucking mansion if it wasn't for me?
He gives, but always to remind you what you owe. The Janice factor only deepens the absurdity. If anyone in New Jersey was capable of finding creative funding, it was she. Self-anointed artist, professional manipulator, and serial inheritor of tragic windfalls. One can easily imagine her rifling through Livia's old drawers for forgotten cash, or cashing out a dubious insurance policy from Bobby's late wife Karen. Perhaps she even stumbled upon one of Junior's infamous lost stashes, a bundle of untraceable bills left to rot alongside his sanity. In a world where Bobby's biggest emotional investment was a model train set, it's entirely plausible that Janice handled the mortgage and the moral accounting with her usual lack of shame. Some interpretations go full absurdist. Maybe Bobby's windfall came from royalties on Janice's failed musical career. Maybe he wanted a Pepto-Bismol sponsorship after sweeping New York's competitive eating circuit. Or perhaps, as one theory Riley puts it, he had $600,000 buried under the motherfucking orange peel beef. In the mythology of The Sopranos, even the most ridiculous explanation feels oddly appropriate. But beyond the jokes, The most likely answer is painfully mundane. Bobby financed it. By the mid-2000s, mortgage brokers were practically begging anyone with a pulse and a halfway plausible W-2 to take their money. A man with a steady union rep job, no visible vices, and a house to sell could easily qualify, especially with a generous appraisal. Tony's involvement could have further smoothed the path. If he wasn't paying directly, he was undoubtedly pulling strings.
Houses, we got an appraiser who played ball. He's going to reappraise them into $300,000.
A lowball valuation from a friendly appraiser, a whispered favor from a bank officer, and suddenly, the Bacalas have their dream home, and Tony has the satisfaction of playing both benefactor and puppet master. Yet the question persists, because The Sopranos invites such forensic obsession.
Contest, I better see an envelope by tomorrow.
The show's genius lies in how it blurs the mundane in the mythic, treating financial minutiae, ZD, envelopes, HUD scams, with the same gravity as betrayals and murders. When a character like Bobby suddenly ascends to real estate royalty, the audience can't help but demand receipts. It's not just about the money, it's about credibility in a universe that prides itself on realism. And what of the supposed $1.2 million valuation? Even that deserves skepticism. The Sopranos often exaggerated New Jersey's property market for dramatic flair. Tony's own house, the series suburban Versailles, sold in real life for a mere $150,000 in 1997. The idea that Johnny Sack's home, gaudy as it may be, was worth nearly 10 times that within a decade stretches belief. Then again, the show's moral economy has always been inflated. The currency of guilt, loyalty, and ego far outweighs actual dollars. In the end, Bobby's house purchase functions less as a financial puzzle and more as thematic poetry. It represents the illusion of legitimacy, the fantasy that even gangsters can buy their way into middle-class respectability. A mortgage here, a paper job there, and suddenly, the mob looks almost domestic. Yet beneath the granite countertops and cul-de-sac dreams, the rot remains. Bobby's home, like his quiet decency, becomes collateral in Tony's ever-expanding empire of control. So, where did the money come from? From the same mystical place as all Sopranos' wealth, a mix of scams, favors, and narrative necessity. Maybe a mortgage, maybe hush money from Tony, maybe divine intervention from the god of implausible plot logistics. Whatever the case, it was paid in full, with interest, when Bobby's blood stained the floor of that model train store. In the end, it's poetic symmetry. Bobby spent his life collecting tiny trains in perfect order, believing that with enough care, he could build something stable. Instead, he bought a house that symbolized everything the mob could never truly afford: security, peace, legitimacy. Johnny Sack's mansion wasn't Bobby's dream, it was Tony's joke, bought on credit and doomed to foreclosure by fate. Call it Schrodinger's ZD. Bobby both could and couldn't afford the house. Like everything in The Sopranos, the truth is buried somewhere between the mortgage paperwork and the meatballs. In Tony's world, nothing's free, not even a mortgage. Subscribe, pay your dues.